The rational actor paradigm is the premise that people make decisions based on what they think is best for themselves, given the information that they have when they make the decision. This suggests that we can identify the source of a bad decision within a firm by getting answers to three questions. First, who is making the decision? Once we've identified the decider, we ask the second question. What information does the decider have? And then the third question is, what incentives does the decider face? The rational actor paradigm predicts that the answers to these questions will usually reveal why the bad decision occurs. Two forces are the usual suspects. First, the person making the decision might have bad information. If the person making the decision has bad information, they may the decision they make may well be bad for the owners. The second reason that the decider may make a bad decision is because the decider has an incentive to do so. The nature, now, so decision rights, when we start talking about the decider, we need to recognize that the nature of decision rights often varies. Sometimes decision rights are very clear, other times they're vague. One of my rules of thumb is if the decision rights are vague, you usually get worse decisions. If no one's responsible, no one has a strong incentive to take care and put forth effort to get a good decision. Sometimes decision rights reside in an individual. Sometimes they're group decisions. These have very different dynamics, and I'm sure you can study some of that in your courses on organizational behavior. Also, it's also important to recognize that sometimes decision rights follow an organizational charts, but sometimes an unofficial influencer is really the decider in a process. If you're a salesperson, my recommendation to you is find out who's actually making the decision. It might not be the vice president for procurement. It might be the assistant to the vice president for procurement. Figure out who it is that's really making the decision and work on them to show them the benefits of your product. There's a difference in my mind between information and data. Simply telling somebody something doesn't mean it's informative for them. In fact, I feel like sometimes my lectures are just data, but aren't quite getting through to the student in a way that I would have hoped. To be information, data must be accessible, understandable, and credible. You've got to be able to get to it easily. It's got to make sense to you when you get there, and you've got to believe it when you read it or see it. This means that memos, statements, charts, tables, PowerPoint decks, presentations, and spreadsheets may not be information. Data becomes information only after the reader sees how it is useful to make the decision. Something filed away in a cabinet or on the cloud is not information. I've received plenty of memos that I delete immediately and have not taken the time to read through all of the boilerplate to find out exactly what they're telling me. That's data, not information. It's also important to recognize that incentives come in many forms. They can be intrinsic or they can be external. We're going to focus, economics tends to focus more on external incentives. Organizational behavior spends more time looking at the intrinsic motivations that people have. Incentives can be monetary versus non-monetary. They both matter. Again, economics tends to focus a little more on monetary, but we recognize that non-monetary things are very important to people. You can either reward for success or punish for failure. These have different properties. Again, the distinction are things that are a little beyond the scope of this course. All I'm trying to do is point out that incentives come in a lot of different forms, a lot of different ways. You need to be aware when you're trying to answer the question, what incentives does this person face? Recognize these incentives can come at them lots of different ways.